Good afternoon, everyone. Fukao-sensei, thank you very much for your kind introduction. And I also like to thank RIETI and the Australian National University for having me in this extremely inspiring opportunity. My name is Motosada MATANO, as introduced, Senior Director and Cabinet Councillor at the National Security Secretariat of the NSS of Japan. My primary role is to oversee the economic security agenda at the NSS. To begin with, the NSS is a fairly new institution within the Japanese government created to serve as a counterpart to the NSCs of other countries like the US. We have marked our 10th anniversary this year, while our economic security unit is the latest addition to the NSS, set up about 4 years ago, following the quickly rising trend of economic security. As it is clearly stated in our new 2022 National Security Strategy, economic security is now fully integrated into our national security. Our role is to coordinate and lead whole-of-government economic security efforts, and thus we work closely with other government agencies on a day-to-day basis to facilitate policy planning, advance policy agenda, and promote coordination in policy implementation. In that regard, we are a team comprising of staffs from the Cabinet Secretariat and those seconded from an array of the Japanese government agencies, including Minister of Internal Affairs and Communications, Foreign Affairs, Finance, Education, Science and Technology, Agriculture, Economic Trade and Industry, METI, Defense, National Police Agency, and Financial Services Agency. This will allow us to engage in an all-Japan effort to advance our agenda. Moving on to economic security itself. In the mid-2010s, when I was serving as a TPP negotiator, free trade was actively being promoted, and negotiations for free trade agreements were seen everywhere in the world, probably negotiated most intensively since the GATT-URGA round. Back then, I remember working very closely with Kawase-sensei, who's here today. But today, it seems that we are in an entirely different situation. This is also true in the United States, where I was stationed prior to this post until this July. For example, when I was a trade warrior 10 years ago or so, I remember that Japan and the US, together with the Australian friends as well, were closely teaming up to heavily promote rules on prohibition of data localization or prohibition of disclosure of source code. But today, we see varying views, even within the US and Japan, on these elements. Today, we are faced with the most severe and complex security environment since the end of World War II and are in an era of geopolitical competition. The scope of national security has well expanded to the field of economy, and economic security is now the buzzword of the day. When I was in Washington again, the term free trade sometimes sounded like an F word. Today, we talk about economic coercion, supply chain disruption, technology leakage, civil-military fusion, and the list goes on. The need to take action to cope with the situation is imminent. On the other hand, there is no established definition for economic security. In this transitional period, the question we face with is, what needs to be changed as we transit from a free trade era to an economic security era? In order to address this question, the concept of small yard, high fence has become a key phrase, especially in the US. The phrase is used to describe the idea that free economy will be regulated from economic security perspective only within the small yard, where the regulation or control will be limited to those truly necessary to ensure national security. Amidst such a situation, Japan has come up with a goal to promote its economic security, aiming at 1, enhancing Japan's self-reliance, as well as 2, ensuring its technological superiority and indispensability. That said, economic security has a side to it which is fundamentally different from conventional national security. Simply put, there are various trade-offs. For instance, competition. While we focus on geopolitical competition among states, there are competitions in a traditional sense at the same time. Competition among private companies both in and out of a country. And it is the latter competition that has supported the economic growth of the advanced nations, including Japan. Another thing to note is that the sources of national power are what we call DIMET, diplomacy, intelligence, military, economy, and technology. Without a robust economy, a state will not be strong. Japan's economy and technological power indeed has been fueled by free economy and free trade, and the global supply chains are what buoyed our robust economy. In that regard, it would defeat the purpose if we act in the name of economic security and in the end erode the economy and technology themselves that we intend to protect. We know well that we need to do something in this fast-changing international environment with excessive dependence on other countries, weaponization of economic policy, and economic coercion. However, what goes into or should be inside the small yard, or how small or big the yard should be, is something that is easier said than done themselves, and there is no easy answer to this question. All these considerations make economic security an extremely complex agenda, a policy agenda. From this perspective, Japan firstly decided to take concrete and specific measures in the areas that clearly needed to be addressed, or measures to address what I call core elements which would uncontroversially fall in the small yard. As the concrete first step, we have enacted the so-called Economic Security Promotion Act, which systematically legislates measures that need to be taken on an urgent basis to address economic security challenges. Actually, this act has been highly regarded by the international community as a pathfinder effort. There are 4 pillars to this act. One is ensuring a stable supply of critical products, such as semiconductors and antimicrobials. Currently, 12 products are designated as specified critical products, and 105 plans from business entities to ensure their stable supply have been approved, to which the government offers various support. 2, securing stable provision of essential infrastructure services, such as electricity, gas, and water. 213 service providers supporting 14 business sectors are subject to certain notification and screening requirements to prevent the misuse of or disruptions to the services provided. 3, enhancing the development of designated critical technologies, including in areas such as space and cyber. Under what we call the K program, 50 critical technologies have been selected with the total of 500 billion yen appropriated to support R&D efforts on these technologies. And 4, creating a system for non-disclosure of selected patent applications that have national security implications. Currently, patent applications pertaining to 25 technology fields are designated for security reviews. All those 4 pillars of the Act have entered the implementation phase by May this year. That said, this is not where we stop. As the contours of economic security remain fluid, Japan's policies continue to evolve as well. One of the recent developments was the enactment of a new law in May this year, which newly introduced a security clearance system in the field of economic security. We are now working to finalize the implementation standards required to actually implement this law. Through the implementation of the security clearance system, which is aligned with the standards of other countries, we hope to further facilitate the exchange of information with our allies and partners. By doing so, we believe we can expand opportunities for Japanese firms making bids for foreign government procurement tenders and further facilitate international research collaborations. Another line of effort is foreign investment screening, for which addressing to the trade-offs that I mentioned is critical. While it is necessary to further promote foreign investments, which will contribute to the sound economic development under the principle of free transaction, it is also critical that we balance this with the need to address economic security concerns. In the meantime, we're constantly faced with the difficult question of how large our yard should be or how high our fence should be. We have recently added more designated business sectors for screening from the perspective of securing the supply chain as well as addressing risks of technology leakage and military use. But in doing so, we were at the same time fully aware of the importance of foreign investment in Japan in making our economy stronger. Research, security, and integrity is another focus area. Ensuring open and research environment is critical to bringing in new innovation and ensuring technological advantages, or core strength. At the same time, the current international environment also requires us to manage risks associated with openness, including the risk of technology leakage. We are also aware that managing such risks opens new opportunities and frontiers for our international research collaboration. This is why we are currently working to formulate a guideline for research institutions, including universities, to promote research security measures, including due diligence, and to raise the awareness of the private sector engaging in R&D efforts. Now, let us turn our eyes to the region more broadly. As I mentioned, there is no established definition for economic security. The concept can be understood in various ways depending on the economic structure of each country and the challenges it perceives. For example, it is impossible for Japan to be completely self-reliant on natural resources. There is no one-size-fits-all economic security policy. That said, as the region forms a gigantic supply chain network that is widely connected to the global economy, Japan attaches importance on enhancing the resilience of the supply chains in this region and reinforcing the self-reliance of the like-minded countries. The countries in the region should not be overly dependent on particular countries and should be able to make their own decisions regarding the course of their country, thereby realizing their full potential. We believe this is essential for the prosperity of the region in the international environment today. As economy is one of the core sources of national power, Japan continues to attach importance to reinforcing the multilateral trading system that covers the large yard or the whole yard. As we engage more in what to put in the small yard, We have come to believe that strengthening rules-based international economic order is increasingly crucial when, for instance, certain countries have started to weaponize economic dependencies. I believe that there are more that could be done in this area. To take an example, under the past WTO regime, obligation to import has been the focus. However, in the present-day context, it may be useful to shed further light on Article 11 of GATT, which stipulates obligation to export. The haves must give the have-nots. To fight against economic coercion, which unfairly distorts the economic development of other countries, we put strong emphasis in international cooperation with our friends. For example, at the G7 Hiroshima summit last year, the G7 countries agreed to launch the coordination platform on economic coercion to promote coordinated responses to economic coercion. This is not a framework just for the G7 countries, but we have also concurred to provide support when other non-G7 countries and economies are targeted as a demonstration of solidarity and resolve to uphold the rule of law. Another line of effort is the Quad, through which we are promoting the resilience of the regional economy and extending undersea economy by expanding open, trusted, and resilient 5G infrastructure and extending undersea cables to the island states, thereby enabling the region to fully benefit from the digital economy. We do whatever we can. Furthermore, Japan promotes AZEC, or Asia Zero Emission Community, where Asian countries share the principle of advancing decarbonization and work together to promote energy transition. By addressing climate change, promoting inclusive economic growth, and achieving energy security simultaneously. This initiative aims to enhance resilience and self-reliance of the region. Lastly, as supply chains transcend borders, international cooperation is necessary to enhance the resilience. We need to enhance collaboration in diversifying the source of critical materials, including critical minerals, and in responding to disruptions. We are working closely with the like-minded countries in the efforts such as the IPEF supply chain agreement, the Quad, and the trilateral efforts among Japan, the US, and the ROK. We will continue to be an active contributor to such efforts. I'd like to stress a few other things before I conclude. The major difference between traditional security and economic security is that for the latter, the private sector entities are indeed one of the main players. In this sense, our efforts will not be truly effective unless they are founded on close communication and collaboration between the government and the private sector. As you may notice from the efforts made by Japan, various countries are focusing their efforts on challenges that require immediate measures or on core areas of the small yard. On the other hand, as such efforts make progress, we are bound to face other relevant issues. To raise a few, a question concerning where the boundary of the small yard should be, how high the fence should be, and how we should manage the area outside the small yard, namely the large yard. All of those are indivisible pieces of the full picture of economic security and should be considered as a single set of issues. Lastly, I assume that one of the themes or a hidden agenda of today's symposium is to discuss the role of free trade plays in the era of economic security. In other words, that free trade is not dead yet. When I was in Washington, I saw many former advocates of free trade converted to experts of economic security. However, just before I left, I sensed that they have come to start discussing that free trade has a role to play in this era of economic security as well. In other words, people have come to quietly use the F word again. Finally, in this sense, I am certain that today's symposium is extremely important, timely, and groundbreaking. As I mentioned, we must be attentive. The government has to be attentive to the needs and concerns of the private sector and the academia so as to come up with the better policy planning and implementation. And I thus very much looking forward to learning from a lot from today's discussions. Thank you very much.